what I see here was the opportunity to put that pod in Worcester to start, take the Western Michigan pod, put that in Sioux Falls, and then just swap Western Michigan and North Dakota.
Welcome to USCHO's Bracketology Extra for Thursday, February 26, 2026. I'm Ed Trefsker alongside Jim Connolly. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Division I Men's Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 for tickets. Well, we have a new bracket for this week. Starting out in Albany, number 1 overall Michigan State will be joined by Minnesota, Duluth, Cornell, and as the Atlantic Hockey America representative, Bentley. Let's look at Worcester. Number 4 overall Western Michigan is joined by 3 Eastern teams, Providence, Dartmouth, and Connecticut. Heading out to Loveland, Colorado, number 2 overall Michigan has Quinnipiac, the host school Denver, and St. Thomas. And as we turn to Sioux Falls, number 3 overall North Dakota will be joined by Penn State, Boston College, and Wisconsin. The last in at-large team is Connecticut, and the last at-large team out in this is Minnesota State. Well, Jim, this must have been a fun one for you acting as the committee because there's a little bit of movement in there, but it's why you may not just automatically use geography to reward the number 1 seed. You've got to place your pods and then set it first. So how did you go about doing that?
So I think we've been kind of defaulting to just taking North Dakota's entire pod and putting it in Sioux Falls. If I did that, then I'm putting 3 Eastern teams in that same region. You would end up getting Providence, Dartmouth, and Connecticut in Sioux Falls. You're going to get an Eastern team moving no matter what because of this 3 of them in the 3 seed band. But what I see here was the opportunity to put that pod in Worcester to start, take the Western Michigan pod, put that in Sioux Falls, and then just swap Western Michigan and North Dakota. You're swapping number 1 seeds, which you maybe typically don't do. But this was a good opportunity to geographically align things that you get. I really do want North Dakota to be able to play in Sioux Falls. It will drive attendance there. And without them or Augustana, you won't have a strong attendance base. I worry about that. So I need to get North Dakota back there. The real job was making sure that you keep 3 Eastern teams east. So the only team maybe that gets punished here is Western Michigan. Again, Western Michigan is the 4th of the 4 top seeds. Are they getting a little bit punished having to play UConn in the first round on, not a home ice, but UConn will travel a lot of fans. Maybe it doesn't seem fair, but again, the number 4 of 4 number 1 seeds, I don't feel the need to protect.
So you just made basically the 3-4 swap at the top of the bracket and left everybody there. Brings up a question, though. So you end up swapping what would have been UConn and Wisconsin as teams at the bottom of that regional bracket. Anybody helped or hurt by that?
I think you want to protect number 1 seeds to an extent. You want to make sure that the number 1 overall seed gets the lowest seed. So Michigan State, you want to give them, in this case, Bentley. Everybody else in the number 1 seed, I don't care which number 4 seed they're playing. They're all tough competition. Not that I'm not trying to say that Bentley is not, but historically Atlantic Hockey has, not won that first round game too often. They've had a few wins in the tournament, but still, it's not one that you typically expect. The other 4 seeds, so the 15, 14, and 13 overall, they're all probably equally measured, equally based. So I don't mind swapping 3 and 4 here and thus swapping their matchup at the bottom of the bracket. I don't have an issue with that. I don't think the committee would either.
And you're offsetting maybe a little bit of difference with being in front of a whole lot of fans who will make the easy short trip to Sioux Falls for the Fighting Hawks. So that probably balances it out there too. And then travel and attendance. You get those 3 Eastern teams there in Worcester. You don't have to worry about selling out there. You don't have to worry about it in Sioux Falls. But if it was the other way around, you're not going to get those Eastern teams to travel. And even as well as North Dakota fans travel, you're going to get 4 times as many in Sioux Falls as you might in Worcester, even if that, because that's a quick turnaround. So that all makes sense. So the committee considers bracket integrity first and then not interconference matchups. You didn't have to worry about that. So it really came down to attendance and really maybe even travel for this.
Yeah, we did have an interconference matchup. We actually had 2 of them, an NCHC one and an ECAC one. We were just able to make a direct swap, and that was an easy solve. So that wasn't too much of an issue. Once we did that, that was when the rest of the bracket got put together and moved. The one thing I will highlight here, Ed, you started to bring up attendance, and we will be good in Sioux Falls with this bracket. Loveland, no problem. I think Worcester will probably have a really strong building as well. Albany, not very protected here, and that's an issue. When you have 3 Eastern teams in that same 3 belts, if you will, Cornell, Dartmouth, and Boston College all being number 3 seeds, you can only have 2 of them stay East. I would much rather have Cornell and Albany than Boston College, but I am very concerned about the Albany region. I don't think that with those 4 teams, Michigan State, Minnesota, Duluth, Cornell, and Bentley, that we have a very strong building for attendance.
And it's a pretty good sized building too, which sometimes has upper areas closed off. So yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, but you're not necessarily going to have a huge draw in every location. And it sounds like you'll still have enough in Albany to make it a good atmosphere in the building. So it seems reasonable that that's how it would end up. Really the cleanest version that the committee could have come up with. But that leaves us to what's coming up this weekend. And there's still some big matchups happening as leagues are jockeying for position in conference and also for the NPI. First, UConn versus UMass, home and home. They start out on campus at UConn on Friday, right to the bubble. This is because UConn is the last one in, so they're kind of playing to keep their head above water. And now with home and home, that's an even better situation because they'll head up to Amherst on Saturday. You get that whole home and home dynamic. Maybe the road team wins on Friday and there's a big rush there, but what do you look for out of this one?
Well, this is a very interesting series. I'm actually calling the Friday game on Nesson, and we were talking to Greg Carville yesterday on our production call, and he highlighted that he's circled this series on his calendar, which is kind of surprising. UMass was not having a good season at the break. They've had a fantastic second half, and as the team started winning, he kind of said, boy, that UConn series at the end could make or break it for both teams. And that's where we are. I think if we split this thing, you'll probably end up with UConn right around the bubble, UMass below the bubble. If UMass sweeps, I think you could see them jump past UConn inside the bubble, but you would be knocking Connecticut out. And if Connecticut sweeps, then we'll go to the other extreme. I think they could move up into that 12, 13, 14 range and get a little bit more solid. We know 15 historically has not made the cut. Right now they would, but historically, I think 14 has been the cut line that most teams are most concerned about. So if I'm UConn, I'm just trying to find a way to move up as quickly as I can.
Quinnipiac travels to Dartmouth. It's a single game on Friday. Seeding in the ECACs is a big part of this. And these are the kind of games maybe you've got to see whether these teams end up in the same band. Quinnipiac had kind of a clunker last weekend against Cornell, which didn't seem to hurt them too badly. But there's no chance in the ECAC either to come back after Saturday. So how you are on Saturday because it's the single travel partner. So how do you break this one down? It's really big for both teams.
It is, and maybe a little bit more so for Dartmouth. Quinnipiac, they have solidified their hopes, and they're almost 100%. They're almost a lock right now. Dartmouth, not so much. They're 85%. They're in very good position. I'm not going to say they're going to make the tournament. They're in good position. Is there a question here of, where Dartmouth would go if they take losses? A loss to Quinnipiac probably doesn't hurt, but if you're going to play Quinnipiac's travel partner, which is Princeton, I believe, what does that do if you were to lose that game? So I do have some strong concerns for Dartmouth in this series. They have to find, single game, just Friday. They have to find a way on Friday to get that win. It would really help their footing. Quinnipiac, like I said, they're in good position. I'm not too concerned about them.
And the third one is in the CCHA at St. Thomas at Bemidji State. Two big games. St. Thomas inside the bubble, but they want to stay there. And Bemidji's just trying to fight for position in the CCHA.
Yeah, this is almost a must for St. Thomas. That you have to take a lot of points. 5 out of 6 minimally feels like what you have to get away. Bemidji right now is 50 in the NPI. So that anything you do against them, even if it's on the road, if you don't win or at least take a win and a tie, you're going to drop. And St. Thomas has been slowly falling. They're still inside the bubble, but not with a lot of safety. So I think the Tommies really have to be focused going into this series, knowing that this is all about points. And listen, Bemidji, if you're going to go on a run and you're going to start the tournament strong, you might as well start it a week early. Play really well this week. Maybe you get that run in the tournament. They were the team I picked last Monday or whatever day we talked about Dark Horses, Wednesday. They were the team I picked for the CCHA. So, if they're going to make that run, start it now.
And we should mention last week there was one team that was solidified in the tournament. This week we have 4. All those number 1 seeds are confirmed in the tournament. They could drop out of number 1 seeds, but they can't drop out of the cut line for the bubble. So check out Jim's column. We've got the link in the comments or in the show notes. Drop your comments on what you think about it. Also, Jim explains in more detail in the column. And I guess we'll be watching to see what happens with UConn-UMass series. Will UConn stay in, or are they going to be in bubble trouble come Sunday night?
Yeah, it should be another interesting weekend of college hockey. A lot of movement still left, but more teams solidifying their hopes.
We've been sponsored by the NCAA Division I Men's Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas. ncaa.com/mfrozen4 for tickets. Watch on YouTube as well as listen on your favorite podcast app. youtube.com/USCHO. Like and subscribe. For Jim Conley, I'm Ed Trefsker, and this has been USCHO's Bracketology Extra.